How's it going, card fighters? I'm Gleaming Garmore, and today we're going to take a nice look at a brand new nation for the English edition of Cardfight Vanguard Overdress. That's right, I'm going to show you guys some token Ranbu gameplay. Now, I've already recorded the games, and we're just going to take a look at some of the games I found in my playtesting. This is actually the same. It's actually the same list and the same variant of the deck that I intend to give a deck profile on later when all of my cards come in. I got some pretty shiny cards, some pretty nice looking cardboard to show you all when that happens. But we're gonna have to wait and indulge in some of the gameplay first, and you guys will get the list in detail later. Now, starting with our first game, we have our deck versus Chakravarti Divine Dragon Nirvana, also making use of the brand new Mahara Nirvana. And we open up with two Persona Rides, a copy of Manoyoshi Sadamune. And Sadamune is really interesting. It's a grade 1 that doubles all the effects of triggers it receives as long as it's in your back row. We ride into our grade 1 Kashuu Kiyomitsu Sento. Kashuu Sento, when rode upon by Kashuu Toku, which is our grade 2, can check the top card of our deck and then either leave it on top or put it in the soul. So we're going to ride by dropping a 5k shield, going into Kashuu Toku. Kashuu Sento is going to top check, and we will find Yasusada off the top, putting him into the soul so that we can try and check a trigger. We do check a front trigger. Now, as I've found through playing these games, I think front triggers might not actually be that useful. They sounded really interesting on paper because a lot of our rearguards just didn't gain any power. Yasusada being the main rearguard that actually gains any power at all. But I feel like playing additional crits is far more relevant because you can give the power from the critical to the Sadamunes in your back row. Anyway, we ride into Kashuu Kiwame. Kashuu Toku's skill searches us another copy of Yamato no Kami Yasusada, and then we start popping off. We use Kashu's skill to counterblast 1, soul blast 1, check the top card, put it on top or bottom, and draw a card. So we draw into our Hakusan, the PG, and then we start attacking with our Yamato no Kamis. Try and check a trigger with our Kashuu Kiyomitsu, but here's the thing. Hakusan is really clingy. Hakusan is in our hand at 4 copies right now, which is actually more of a detriment than an asset, because then we have to start discarding Hakusans for other Hakusans. And our opponent goes ahead and rides into Nirvana, goes for the Horn of Blessing, discarding a Virina Esperardia, and then overdresses into the regular Virina. Our opponent calls a Trickstar to the back row for reasons I cannot possibly understand, and attacks us with Nirvana, to which we no guard immediately, because we do need a counterblast to use our Kashu's draw effect next turn. So we took 2 damage. Luckily, we check a Goto Toshiro, a critical trigger, and he retires our Nirvana, but we are going to Hakusan, discarding Hakusan, shuffle our hand up to make sure that he doesn't catch on to how many PGs are in our hand. And then, Persona Ride. Using our Persona Ride skill, we're going to look at the top, bottom deck it, draw a card, call Heshikiri Hasebe. Hasebe lets us check the top 2 cards of our deck and rearrange them in any order. And then, of course, we're also going to use the skill of our Yamato no Kami Yasusada to counterblast 1 and give him 10k power since our Vanguard is Kashuu Kiwame. A fun fact that I didn't learn until very late into testing this, or didn't think about till very late into testing this, is Yamato no Kami is not once per turn. You can counterblast 2 and gain 20k power. Now, our opponent slaps an overtrigger in the way of our Kashuu Kiwame. Unfortunately, he says no pass. This is actually a 2 to pass because of our Monoyoshi. But because we've checked the top 2, we know that our second card is not going to be a trigger, which is really unfortunate. So we just have to give the effects to Yamato no Kami and attack for 2 crits, which our opponent will respond to by dropping a 20k shield, as well as another 20k shield, dropping 40k shield to guard our Yamato no Kami. And then we pass the turn over to them. They are not going to Persona Ride. They are instead going to ride into the Chakravarti True Dragon Mahar Nirvana. They're not? Buddy, you're Mahar Nirvana. That's confusing. Okay, well, they will then call down Blaze Maiden Hemina and use Hemina's skill, counterblasting 1, checking top 7 for an Overdress card. I wonder what they'll find off the top. But a Virina Erger. Now, this deck is really interesting. They are running both Erger as well as Mahar Nirvana, and I believe they are playing Persona Ride copies of Nirvana in their deck somewhere. So they call Burning Fall Dragon to boost the Vanguard. Unfortunately, that doesn't change their magic numbers. Even though they have the Virina Erger, they're electing to keep the Trickstar in the back row, not use its skill. We, of course, guard 2 to pass on the Mahar Nirvana, or on the regular Nirvana. They check Horn of Blessing and Twin Buckler. So, we know that they've gained a net 0 in shield value, but they do have a PG. They're going to swing with Virina again. Do they not have the soul for Erger? Yeah, they simply don't have the soul for Erger because they used regular Virina. But they are simply going to attack us with Virina. I think my opponent might have forgotten something. I think maybe Virina was supposed to be 30k? Yeah, because Virina's supposed to gain the power regardless. I don't know why my opponent didn't notice that. Oh, and this was an interesting portion of the game where we accidentally put the Gokotai back in the deck. But they were attacking rearguard, so we just went ahead and took it. Since we don't have a Persona Ride, we call Hasabe, we check top 2, and put them back in any order. It seems like we did not see a trigger because we're attacking with the rearguard Hasabe first into their Virina. And I wonder if they'll guard Virina or they'll just let it go. Because at this point, it's probably for the best that they just let this go and resolve Esperardia next turn with as many original dresses as possible. So, of course, they let the Trickstar and the Virina go to the drop zone, which makes them prime material for Esperardia. Of course, also discarding the Virina Erger to make sure that that Esperardia has another original dress card. And then we check no triggers, which means our second Hasabe can't even touch the Vanguard. So we have to end our turn there. Of course, shuffling up our hand to make sure our opponent does not figure out where we're keeping cards and what we're clicking on. And now, at this time, they ride into true Chakravarti Dragon, Mahar Nirvana. Now, Mahar Nirvana gives +10 to the front row as long as there's a unit in Overdress state, which, of course, now that they have Esperardia, there is. When Esperardia is placed, it puts all of the Overdress units and Trickstars from your drop zone into this unit's original dress. Also, Esperardia is a restander, which is very painful for us. It also gains 5,000 power per original dress. It's about to gain 25,000 power as our opponent's Vanguard attacks. And we are simply going to have to no-guard this, hold this hit. And on top of all of this, the Mahar Nirvana has triple drive, checking a heal to put our opponent down to 3 damage where we're at 4. Hemina attacks our rearguard Hasabe, and then we perfect guard Esperardia because I'm not ready to go to 5 damage yet. We use another Heshikiri to check top 2. And apparently we like what we see, because we just head straight into battle phase, checking Gokotai, giving the power to one of the Heshikiris, as well as Hakata, giving the power to the other Heshikiri, attacking Esperardia 2 times, forcing our opponent to guard it, or else lose their 5 original dress Esperardia. They activate Horn of Blessing, discarding Virina Arcs, drawing 2, calling down Hemina, using Hemina's skill again to try and search for a second Esperardia, it seems. And finding nothing. Then they call down 2 copies of Blaze Maiden Elba, not to be confused with Alba or Elro from Link Joker, resting 3 Blaze Maiden rearguards to give the skill to your Vanguard that the entire front row is going to gain 10,000 power. Then on top of that, Mahar Nirvana's existing +10 is going to go off. And they're going to attack us to the face. We will no guard this, and they check a crit. Unfortunately, we have no recourse against that. We have 2 more PGs. They did not attack with the Esperardia because they are saving the Nirvana in the soul to use Mahar Nirvana's skill to revive a Trickstar for another Esperardia, it seems. We do check the Yagen heal. So you might notice I'm running 2 Gokutais, 1 Myoru, and 1 Yagen, because I simply like Sword Boys. We need to play as many different ones as possible. Now, we're going to see the star of the deck here, the MVP, Mikazuchi Munichika, who I'm going to here on out refer to as Gramps. If you know it, you know. Gramps here has 3 different effects that are all active at 3 or more, 4 or more, and 5 or more damage. First of all, when he attacks at 3 or more, he gains 5k power until the end of the turn. When he attacks at 4 or more, we look at the top card of our deck and we can put it on top or leave it on the bottom, or we can leave it on top or put it on the bottom. And if he attacks at 5 or more, we can Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, and restand him for another 15k swing. All of these abilities are once per turn, though. Keep that in mind. You can only do them all at once. You can't split them up because they are all attached to the same auto ability. They ping us for 1 damage with Mahar Nirvana's skill, and we see off the top, Kashuu, Kiyomitsu, Shinken, Hisatsu, our over trigger. This is saving us a whole round of damage. Unfortunately, this means our Gramps is going to get targeted. They do use Elba's skill, giving power to the front row, and then Trickstar attacks Gramps, and we let him go, and we let Hakata go, because there's no way we're guarding all of these swings. We no-guard the Vanguard, because obviously, he's already used his over-trigger. There's no way he's hitting me. Now, we're in a pretty interesting part of the game here. We're both very low on cards in deck, and 1 slip-up is going to cost either one of us the game. So now I have a full back row of Sadamunes, and if only a front trigger applied to either row instead of the front row. Could you imagine giving 20k to all of my columns? Our opponent is going to 2 to pass us here, and we cannot check 1. We cannot check even 1 to surprise them with the Sadamune skill. Instead, we're going to have Hyuga attack. Hyuga, by the way, is a top deck checker who can put the card he checks off the top on the bottom if you don't like it. And then our other interesting card here is Kotagiri Go. I haven't talked about him this game. Kotagiri Go, when your Vanguard gets attacked, can Soul Blast 1 to move him to guard circle, and this does not count as an intercept. So, if a skill activates when a unit would intercept, Kotagiri Go is unaffected. He simply moves. Passing back over to our opponent, we'll see what they've got for us. They are probably going to discard one of the Mahar Nirvanas in their hand. Or they could call it, they're going to call the draw trigger first so that they can then use the Mahar Nirvana skill. Our opponent didn't even send a Nirvana this time. Oh my gosh, our opponent was just cheating. Our opponent was just cheating constantly. But the Trickstar being 23 is a big problem. We cannot 2-card guard it. Instead, we have to send a Gokotai from our hand. And then we are going to have to hard guard this Virina Esperardia, or else we're not going to be able to handle its restand. At least, that's what I think, not realizing that Mahar Nirvana has triple drive and our opponent has 3 cards in the deck. As such, we stand, we draw, we move to our main phase, calling Munichikas, 2 Munichikas in fact, attacking with 1 for 15 at the Vanguard. They guard it with Trickstar, we restand. And then we attack with the other Munichika, check top card, put it on the bottom, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, restand. They use their PG, we attack with our Vanguard. They PG again. And there's no trigger in our deck. And then lastly, we attack with our Munichika that restood, and they check a heal trigger. They check a heal trigger. We have 1 card in our deck, and our last attack cannot hit. They will draw for turn, and then they will pass turn, and we will deck out. Now, this game was down to the wire, but I feel like it shows you a lot of the strengths that specifically the Kashuu Kiyomitsu deck has. Unfortunately, we could not clutch the game, but we were almost there. We were literally almost there. And there was no reason why this game couldn't have gone differently. As you can see, the deck makes a lot of very powerful columns. At 5 damage, you can perform 5 attacks for 2 Counterblast and 2 Soul Blast. And, of course, it digs through the deck very efficiently, finding your top deck checkers, finding your Persona rides, even finding triggers. Now, let's look at another game. Alright, now this next game is going to be against Felty Rosa. We call the coin toss and we lose. We are once again going second. Now, I had actually never played against Felty Rosa up till this point because, let's be real, I knew, like, let's be real. All the lyrical players you know played either Laronarol, Alestial, or Clarissa, and that was it. So our opponent goes for the turn 1 ride of Beautiful Day Off Felty Rosa, who can, for Soul Blast 1, when you ride upon her, add a ghost from your drop zone to your hand. So we're going to discard a Kotagiri Go to ride into Kashuu Sento, using our Vanguard, our starter skill to draw a card, attacking, drawing Hasabe off the top. We'll be able to use that Hasabe on turn 2 in order to further our aggression by trying to scry for a critical trigger. Our opponent will ride into Talent of Enjoyment, Felty Rosa, and make a board against us. We'll go ahead and throw down the Yagen Toshiro to guard the Vanguard swing for a no pass. And then we'll take our opponent's next swing, checking Goto Toshiro. And we are unfortunately down a critical trigger. We see the Kashuu Kiyomitsu Kiwame off the top. And we have to soul charge it, because otherwise we're not going to get a trigger. We use Hyuga's skill to try and scry the top card, accidentally reveal the Sadamune on top of our deck, and check top 2. And then we rearrange them in any order we choose. Of course, I caught a glimpse there. Our other card was Kotagiri Go, so we've checked Sadamune. We've top decked Sadamune to attempt to use it later. We attack with Sadamune, they no-guard us, and they take 1 damage. And then we attack with Heshikiri, and they use a heal to guard. And then they're discarding for Ride Deck into Rondo of Eventide Moon, Felty Rosa. Now, Felty Rosa has an interesting skill where when her drive check reveals a ghost normal unit, she can call it to an open front row and counterblast 1. And I want you guys to keep an eye on my opponent's counterblast, because I felt like it was kind of fishy when we were playing the game. But unfortunately, CFA's logs do not check when cards are turned face down in your damage zone, so I had no way to verify this. Our opponent puts that card back into their deck, checks top card, sees an Eleonore? That's an interesting name. And then also sees an Ingrid off the top, and I believe she counterblasts for the Ingrid as well. Counterblast for Ingrid. And then Ingrid's skill countercharges 1 and stands a rearguard in the same column. They check another ghost, and then they check another ghost, but they have no more front rows to call the ghost to. Unfortunately, we are out of guard. We are out of options. We have to take these hits, but we see Hakata Toshiro saving the day with a draw trigger. We discard Hyuga, ride into Kiwame. Do our top checks. I forget to search the Yamato no Kami Yasusada, which is very sad for us. But, Munechika is here. And we can use his skill to check the top card. Now, I've made a mistake by placing Munechika and Sadamune in the same column, as opposed to placing Munechika and Hyuga in the same column, and then Hasabe and Sadamune in the same column, because I would really like to give power to Sadamune from any triggers we might check, but that won't do anything if he's behind Gramps. So then we attack with Kashuu, checking Hyuga, as well as Yamato no Kami Yasusada. We still found him. Our opponent takes a Felty Rosa on the damage check. That's 1 less Persona Ride for them. We attack and they guard for 10. They call 2, immediately start swinging with them, and I know that we have to do something about this. I throw a Gokotai in the way. My opponent attacks me. I no guard. They check a draw. And they check a PG. And then we check, once again, Shinken Hisatsu. I'm so sorry. I cannot believe our OT came up in both of these games. We Persona Ride. Draw, go into Hyuga, check top card, leave it on top or bottom, go into Kashuu's skill to check top card, and draw it because it is Hakusan. We are going to keep that Hakusan, and then we're going to call Sanchomo. Sanchomo can countercharge 1 on the turn we Persona Ride. So we still have the top check of Gramps. We have a second Gramps in our hand also, but I'm actually going to use Gramps' top check to set up defensive triggers rather than offensive ones this time. We're going to check a Hasebe and a Sadamune into our opponent's PG, unfortunately. Sanchomo will attack, and then Gramps will attack, be bigger than Sanchomo because of his own power gain, and then we're going to see if there's a heal on top of the deck. If there's not a heal or draw on top, we will put it on the bottom of the deck. Our opponent checks an Ascetus Kanami, who is also a heal. They are going to go down to 4 damage, but they have 4 face-up damage, unfortunately, which is going to spell trouble for us as they Persona Ride into Felty Rosa. That card goes to the top of the deck, I believe. We accidentally put the Hakusan on top of the deck. And I have to talk to my opponent about how I accidentally put it on top of the deck, reveal top card, and then pay the cost for my Hakusan. I discard a Yamato Nakami because we're at a point in the game where I would much rather be attacking with Gramps than with Yamato Nakami. He's more of a mid-game attacker than a late-game attacker, if that makes any sense. Our opponent counterblasts 1 for a drive check, and then checks the one that countercharges, and then counterblasts for a drive check again. And I think this is where I got tripped up, is my opponent was not mentioning that this card countercharged, so they were just having less damage. They were just having less face-up damage, or less face-down damage than they should, and I couldn't figure out why. But like we argue about this for a second, and then I move on. I'm just gonna play the game, I guess. I'm just gonna try my hardest and win the game. We're gonna intercept with Sanchomo because I really want to use the other GG column next turn. This is 36, so we are going to have to PG, discarding Heshikiri Hasebe. Stand and draw into a 3rd copy of GG. We're gonna call in, and then we're gonna start swinging face. Or we're gonna use Kashuu's skill first. Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. And we have exactly 2 soul left for Gramps' skill. We're going to Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, check top card, bottom deck, draw, and it's a front trigger. I should have left it on the top. Then we're going to attack with Munachika for 15, check the top card, put it on the top or the bottom. We're going to top deck it because it's a draw trigger. Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, restand. They guard for 5, GG restands, and I believe I attack with my Vanguard now. Unless... yeah, I attack with my Vanguard now. I'm sure they'll guard this. They do drop a 2 to pass. Unfortunately, I cannot confirm if the next card is a trigger, so I will just give the power to Sadamune. And then we'll draw a card, we'll check a front trigger, which is everything I could have wanted. Because then we can attack with the other GG, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, restand, and top check. Put the heal on the top so that we can guarantee that we survive the next turn. And then, restand, attack for 33. Let's see what our opponent has to say about that one. They take the damage, it's a draw trigger, and then we have one more attack from our other Munachika, which they guard with their over trigger before we pass the turn to them. Now, it's really important to our guard pattern that we acknowledge that on top of our deck is a heal trigger, because otherwise there's no way we live this. They could do anything to us. So we check the Mori Toshiro, And heal 1, staying in the game, getting to 23,000 power on the defensive, 2 to passing our opponent because their over trigger is already gone. And they do eventually check the crit after filling their front row up. We do have to work really hard to guard this. They attack one of our GGs, which we let go because we know we have the other GG in hand. Also, we're out of soul anyway, which kind of sucks, but we can still do top check. So we swing for 23, and our opponent just takes it. I do not know why Hyuga's standing. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be resting. It's very much supposed to be resting. Did something go wrong here? Oh, wait, that's game. Whoopsies. Yeah, our opponent concedes at this point, which, understandable. We had quite a few options left in our deck. But I suppose this is just one more example of the power, the grace, the versatility, the beauty of Kashuu Kiyomitsu. Now, I've got one more game to show you guys today, and it is against Bastion. Now, this is Bastion running both the Persona Ride as well as the Grade 4 Bastion, which is very interesting to me because it simultaneously maximizes the power output of the deck while also being another Grade 3 for you to check. I did think my opponent made some kind of interesting Grade 3 choices, though. So we stand up our Vanguards. There's base, there's Kashuu, and I'm first. So I'm going to draw a card. I'm going to drop Yasusada and ride Kashuu Sento. Pass it over to my opponent, who drops a critical trigger in order to ride Fort, draw a card, and then I do believe we throw a Gokotai in the way. Now, with Gokotai's guard, we make sure that we take no damage. Ditch Hyuga, ride into Toku, use Sento's skill to top deck because that is a critical trigger right there, baby. It's a very complicated answer for me to figure out how I want to aggress. I call a Sadamune behind the Vanguard in case they try to no-pass me, because then I can go, sorry about that, I am actually just going to hit you anyway. So we call Goto Toshiro, hit the Vanguard, and then they take 2 damage. Which you'll see I'm gonna kick myself over this 2 damage in a second when they ride Fort, use the skill, revealing Bastion as well as Embrace Dragon to call Alden. And I think, oh no, they're gonna draw 2 with Alden. But my opponent just doesn't do that. Instead, they attack with Fort, drive checking Alden. I take 1 damage, and then I'm gonna throw this crit down to guard this Alden. Or I could just take damage, I guess. That's fine too. I guess it's because I need to use the Yamato Nakami to aggress early. So we're going to call the Yamato Nakami, use the skill of Kashuu, I believe. Or are we going to use Heshikiri first? See, the sequencing in this deck is a little complicated because the thing about Kashuu is that you will always move at least 1 card off the top of your deck. So if there's a trigger on top, you have nothing you can do about it. Kashuu has to draw the card when it looks at the top card of the deck. So we see on the top, I'm sure you just saw the flash of it. We see on the top of our deck our over trigger. Using the skill of Yasusada, we gain another 10k power, and then we proceed to attack the Vanguard with Kashuu Kiwame. They perfect guard us. We check front as well as Kashuu Kiyomitsu Shinken Hisatsu. Using Shinken Hisatsu, we give Heshikiri plus 100 million, plus 1 crit to all of our units, and we draw a card. Then we're going to hit with Heshikiri for 100 million and 10,000 power, which of course goes through. Our opponent does check the heal, so they're only going to go to 3 damage instead of 4, but it's still very important that we rip so many cards out of our opponent's hand. Here's the thing. Token Ranbu got a good over trigger. There's a lot of reason to play the Obaria over trigger instead. Simply the 15,000 or the 50,000 shield is very important, but plus 1 crit to all of your units is very good. And in your hand, this card can be played. This card can be played to give your Vanguard +1 crit. And if you're at 5 or more damage, then you give all of your units a plus 10,000 power boost instead. So that's in addition to the crit, actually. So that's a 60k power buff that you can obtain for a real reasonable cost. Using Alden's skill, calling their Bastion Persona Ride since they're holding the grade 4 Bastion. Discarding a critical trigger to activate the Pride to Protect order card, which gives all grade 3s boost. And then for some reason not using the skill of Ease Rod Angel, they have the soul to do it, and they just elect not to. Attacking with Alden, we of course guard that because it's an easy guard. Why don't we? And then we take this attack. We see the Mori Toshiro off the top, and we do not heal because we pushed our opponent a little too hard in the early game. Our opponent then attacks with the Bastion boosted by the Bastion, a Persona boost, if you will. I no guard. They check the Bastion Prime as well as a critical trigger. Luckily, Bastion Prime is not a grade 3. We do check the Yagen Toshiro as a heal, and then we check the GG for the 4th damage. Stand and draw, Persona Ride, call down another Sadamune. And then use the skill of Yasusada and the skill of Kashuu Kiwame. We add the Hakusan to our hand, and I think we're all good to go to battle phase. Starting with an attack from our Vanguard, we'll see what our opponent has for us. Looking now, their hand is very measly. They just have 15k shield and a PG, and they have no one to blame but themselves for that. They have been doing nothing but discarding crits this whole game. We check the crit. The question is who we give it to. They've literally gotten rid of their only defensive option. What are they doing? So we give the power to Sadamune because it gives double the power, and then we give the crit to Hasebe, and we attack for game here. So anyway, with those 3 games, I hope you had an excellent taste of the stylings of Token Ranbu in Overdress. There's actually 5 very unique decks in Token Ranbu right now. This is the only one of them I've built. I could come back to the others later, though. They seem very interesting and fun to play. This one, though, seems like one of the best, and one of the ones that will stay the best for the longest time, because it takes the least combo pieces to get started, and it can really just start checking triggers. But I hope you guys check back when I give you guys the deck profile on this deck in a little while. We'll just wait on our stuff to ship in. And then you'll know all about how to play Token Ranbu. Anyway, I've been Gleaming Garmore, and I'll see you guys some other time. Bye-bye.